Well, believe it or not, it's now been 3 decades since the disappearance and deaths of Leslie Mahaffey and Kristen French rocked not just the Golden Horseshoe, but really all of Canada. And while we know how the story ends for the teens and their killers, Paul Bernardo and Karla Holmolka, a new documentary series sheds more light into the makings of two of the most notorious serial killers in Canadian history. Adam Jessel is the executive producer of the Ken Barbie Killers, The Lost Tapes, and Jim Nally is the director. Adam and Jim joining us now here on CB24 Breakfast. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. I watched the series last night. It's a remarkable piece of work. I wonder, though, why, Jim, why did you decide to go back and look at this and kind of bring this back to the fore? What is it you want people to get out of this?
Well, I think first and foremost, thanks for the kind words. I think the streamer model allows us now to make films of much longer duration. So this is a 4-part series. And we felt that nobody had ever really tackled the story in a kind of definitive way. So having 4 episodes helped, because obviously it lasts about 10 years, this story, from beginning to end. And I mean, that was one major attraction, because actually, even though there's been several documentaries about it, we felt that nobody had really gone into the depth that this story really merited. I think as well that we discovered that there were many, many people still suffering as a result of this case. Many people who, are still suffering from the effects of seeing the tapes that were at the center of this case. So, and of course, Bernardo is still applying for parole. So this is still very much a live case. There's a whole generation of people who perhaps don't know the ins and outs of this case. We felt it was an opportune time to kind of go back over it and try and tell it in as definitive a way as we could.
Yeah, Adam, so much of it is gut-wrenching, and as Jim is kind of alluding to, you really spoke to some people who knew Karla Holmolka, good friends of Paul Bernardo, people who'd visited their house, kind of socialized with them, and then also the sort of the legal side of things as well, the sort of different sides of analysis. How did you sort of gather all of this and assemble it? Because you've really got some insight I think a lot of us hadn't seen before, particularly people who sort of grew up either living this sort of case, remembering it, or just following it closely.
Sure, that's right. I mean, I think a lot of that was down to the Jim and the team we worked with, both over here, but also over in Canada. And the team approached a staggering number of people, and it was although in the end we managed to find, as you say, a number of very significant characters that were happy to tell their stories. It was also very striking, just how many people didn't want to talk about this story, for good reasons, as we all know.
Absolutely, and Jim, some of the anecdotes that you sort of hear, even from the law clerk, about being in the bathroom when the lawyer found those hidden tapes. That moment, I think, brought chills to my spine, because someone even acknowledges, and there was, I think, a 72-day search of that home in Port Dalhousie. Those tapes weren't found. Suddenly, they were in the possession, and those tapes changed this entire narrative.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, the whole case really swings on these 6 films, these 6 tapes. And basically, who had those tapes and who had knowledge of what was on those tapes is critical to understanding the story. So, I mean, the police failed to find those tapes, and that was a massive failing. And the defense lawyers held onto those tapes for 16 months, during which time Karla Holmolka secured her plea deal with the police and the Crown Prosecution Service. Because they hadn't seen the tapes, they kind of bought the story that she told them, that she was forced into participation, that she was in fear of her life. And of course, then only after Karla gets her deal, her plea deal for 12 years, do these tapes actually surface. And then, of course, the prosecution have this horrendous realization that they've actually done a deal, agreed a deal with somebody who perhaps had just as much to do with these crimes as Paul Bernardo, the guy that they're desperate to prosecute.
Yeah, the deal with the devil, as it was dubbed. Adam, a question to both of you, but Adam, I'll just ask it to you. You're talking about, us in Canada versus you. I'm assuming you're in the UK somewhere. What's your fascination?
Yes.
What sort of caught your interest about all this?
Well, I think first and foremost, I mean, both Jim and I sort of separately really have done different stories about injustice within the criminal justice systems and across the world over the years. And this was a story I was not aware of this story really as it was playing out in the 90s, nor kind of beyond that. It was actually brought to my attention by a Canadian friend of mine who was whose dad worked on the case. And she was my next neighbour over here in London. sort of 5 years ago. And once she told it to me, there are a number of details, as most Canadians know, many Canadians know, that really stand out in terms of the sort of sheer injustice of this case. And once I sort of digested those, I realised it was, I really felt it was a story that we needed to bring to a kind of wider audience, sort of here in the UK, Europe, and indeed, the US as well.
Yeah, it's a powerful, frightening, chilling story, and we really appreciate the depth that you brought to this. Jim and Adam, thanks for joining us here on CB24 Breakfast. Of course, it's streaming now on Discovery Plus. Good luck with this. Thanks so much for the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.